Rupert Murdoch will continue now online at cspan.org. You can also find his full testimony there. And he'll be back before the inquiry tomorrow, live at 5 a.m. Eastern, here on C-SPAN 2. The Senate is coming in now for more work on a bill that reauthorizes the Violence Against Women Act. And around 2 p.m. Eastern, senators continue voting on amendments to the post office bill. A final passage vote is also expected today.
The Senate will come to order. Today's opening prayer will be offered by His Eminence Archbishop Oshagan Cholian from the Eastern Prelacy of Armenian Apostolic Church of America in New York City.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Almighty God, eternal guide of humankind, we seek the grace of your wisdom in our lives and in the lives of our leaders. We thank you in the name of the Armenian people for your divine mercy in providing them a safe refuge in this blessed country, the United States of America, where they were delivered from the depths of despair of genocide and welcomed with new life. We beseech you to spare all of your children from tyranny and persecution. Reveal your infinite spirit to the members of the Senate, that they may be inspired toward a greatness of purpose and ennobled in their quest for good governance. We offer to you our sacrifices upon the altar of freedom and in act of redemption for all of humankind, with hope of harmony, compassion, and tolerance. We stand before you today and ask this in your name and for your glory. Amen.
Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Peter, this is for Clerk will read a communication to the Senate.
Washington, D.C., April 25, 2012. To the Senate. Under the provisions of Rule 1, Paragraph 3 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, I hereby appoint the Honorable Kirsten E. Gillibrand, a senator from the state of New York, to perform the duties of the chair. Signed, Daniel K. Inouye, President pro tempore.
Madam President.
Majority Leader.
The Senate is now considering the motion to proceed to S. 1925, Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act. The Republicans will control the first half hour, majority the second half hour this morning. Republicans will also control the time from 11:30 to 12:30 today. Majority will control the time from 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. At 2 p.m., the Senate will resume consideration of the postal reform bill. There will be several roll call votes, 6 to 8 votes, at that time in order to complete the bill on that action. Madam President, I am very, very gratified about the work that's been done over the last many months, which will culminate today in the passing of this postal bill. It's been extremely difficult. Lots of people worked on this, and it's been a bipartisan effort. And it's going to be something that is going to send to the House a message that we can do big things. It's an important piece of legislation. One of the biggest that we have dealt with, most complicated we've dealt with in a long, long time. So, as I said, I'm gratified that we've been able to do this, and I congratulate and applaud Senator Lieberman, Senator Collins, and others on our side, especially Senator Tom Carper worked very hard with the chairman and ranking member. There were many others who were stalwarts. We saw that yesterday when there was an effort made to bring the bill down. The first vote we took was to bring the bill down. And by a bipartisan basis, senators stood in the well of the Senate from their desks in the chamber and indicated how important this legislation was. It was, I think, a very important day for the American people. We're on this legislation I just announced dealing with violence against women. Each year, about 5 million Americans are victims of violence by their spouse or partner. Every single day, 3 women are killed at the hands of their abusers. And 9 or 10 every day are beaten really very, very bad, and they're hospitalized and have permanent injuries from these abusers. So reauthorizing this law will ensure that police have tools to more effectively stop this and prosecute, should be persecuted, I strike that from the record, prosecute these people who are the abusers. As I said yesterday, Madam President, I held hearings many years ago on this subject, and the one issue that was pronounced so clearly is that in many, many instances, the only thing that helps these abusers is send them to jail. It works better than counseling. It works better than threats. And people should realize that we need law enforcement to have better ways of approaching these calls they get all the time. I also mentioned yesterday in Las Vegas, one of our prize police officers, sergeant, who had been in the police force many, many years, is called, goes out with one of the junior police officers, and he's killed as he walks in the door. So this is an important piece of legislation. We have 61 co-sponsors on this legislation, and we should pass it. Madam President, the Senate has already a long length of things to do, lots of things to do. But one of the things we have to do is stop the raising of interest rates from students who borrow money to go to school. We were fortunate to reduce this rate from 6.8% to 3.4%. We cut it in half. We did this in 2007. We had just obtained the majority here in the Senate, and we worked on this very, very hard. It went to President Bush. He signed the law, and rightfully so. And everyone should understand this is a bill that was signed by President Bush. So we need to go back to what President Bush signed. We cannot have these rates go up. But if we don't act by July 1st, more than 7 million students will be forced to pay an average of $1,000 more each year for these student loans. So college is already unaffordable for too many people. So I'm hopeful, Madam President, that we can get this done. I'm going to stop my comments today because I was, of course, impressed by the remarks of the guest chaplain. And many years ago, I went to the Armenian church in Armenia, and it was a wonderful experience. We came, and I say to my friend from Rhode Island, who I'm going to yield to just in a second, we went to Armenia after that very brutal winter. The Turks had cut off the oil to Armenia. The Armenians cut down a lot of trees. They survived. Most said they couldn't survive. It was a brutal winter. The Peace Corps volunteers there, not a single Peace Corps volunteer left Armenia, even though they suffered along with the Armenian people. So I have fond memories of my visit to Armenia. I understand the resiliency of the people of Armenia, and remember going and visiting that church, and certainly fond memories. I now yield to my friend, Senator from Rhode Island, Senator Reed.
Well, I thank the Madam President, let me thank the leader for yielding, and let me say how honored I am to be here today to welcome His Eminence Archbishop Oshugan Choloyan Archbishop Charloyan serves as the prelate of the Eastern Prelacy of the Armenian Apostolic Church of America, and he has led the Eastern Prelacy since 1998. And he plays a significant role as the spiritual shepherd for several thousand Armenian Americans from Maine to Florida and west to Texas. Indeed, my home state of Rhode Island is extremely blessed to have the Archbishop as such a strong spiritual and community leader. We continue to benefit from his wisdom, his compassion, and his generous spirit. It is an honor to have him here today as we not only listen to his moving and thoughtful words, but also as we commemorate the 97th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide. 97 years ago, on April 24, 1915, the young Turk leaders of the Ottoman Empire summoned and executed over 200 Armenian community leaders and intellectuals, beginning an 8-year campaign of oppression and massacre. By 1923, nearly 1.5 million Armenians were killed and over 500,000 survivors were exiled. These atrocities affected the lives of every Armenian living in Asia Minor, indeed throughout the world. The survivors of the Armenian Genocide, however, preserved, due to their unbreakable spirit, steadfast resolve, and deep commitment to their faith and to their families. They went on to enrich their countries of emigration, including the United States, with their customs, their culture, and their innate decency. In fact, not only were the Ottomans unable to destroy the Armenian Empire, they strengthened it, and through the participation of Armenians worldwide, has made this world a much better place. Indeed, my home state, a much, much better place. And that is why today we not only commemorate this grave tragedy, but we celebrate the traditions, the contributions, and the extraordinary hard work and decency of the Armenian Americans and Armenians throughout the world. This year, I once again joined my colleagues in the Senate in encouraging the United States to officially recognize the Armenian Genocide. Denial of this history is not consistent with our country's sensitivity to human rights and our dedication to the highest and noblest principles that should govern the world. We must continue to educate our young people against this type of hatred and oppression so that we can seek to prevent such crimes against humanity in the future. It is an honor to be here today, to listen to the wise words of the Archbishop, to hear his prayer, his reflection, and to go forward knowing that he is a powerful force in our country for tolerance and decency. I thank him for being here today. And with that, Madam President, I would yield the floor.
This order, the leadership time is reserved under the previous order. The Senate will resume consideration of the motion to proceed to S1925, which the clerk will report.
Motion to proceed to calendar number 312, S1925, a bill to reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act of 1994.
Under the previous order, the time until 2 p.m. will be equally divided between the two leaders or their designees, with the Republicans controlling the first 30 minutes and the majority controlling the second 30 minutes.
Madam President.
Senator from Nevada.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise today in support of the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act. I'm glad the Senate is finally considering this important legislation, and am proud to be the crucial 60th co-sponsor of this legislation. I commend Chairman Leahy for producing a bill that enjoys broad bipartisan support, and I look forward to the swift passage of VAWA reauthorization. Violence in all forms is unacceptable, but in this particularly horrifying when it takes place in the home, which should be a sanctuary for all who live there. Yet a recent CDC report found nearly half of all the women living in my home state of Nevada at the time of the survey had experienced domestic violence at some point in their lifetime. This statistic is sickening and unacceptable. Women and children often feel powerless to escape abusive or dangerous situations, which often, too often, end in tragedy. My home state knows this sad reality all too well. Nevada is ranked first in the nation for women murdered by men in domestic violence. Sadly, our state has appeared in the top 3 states in this horrific category in the last 7 years. Thankfully, organizations throughout the state of Nevada work tirelessly to help those jeopardized by domestic violence. And while these groups have faced significant challenges due to funding cuts in recent years, they are doing their best with what they have to provide and to provide assistance to families who need it most. According to last year's Nevada Census of Domestic Violence Services, nearly 500 Nevadans received crisis assistance through Nevada's domestic violence programs on a single day. 272 found refuge in emergency shelters or temporary housing. 204 received non-residential assistance. Staff and volunteers fielded an average of 6 hotline calls every hour. And despite the best efforts of our state's domestic violence programs, 25 cases of unmet requests for services were reported on a single day due to shortage of funds and staff. That means thousands of Nevadans could not access the services they needed last year. Nevada's struggling economy has limited state resources to help those who are affected by domestic violence. Reauthorization of VAWA will provide greater certainty for organizations that work hard every day to prevent and address domestic violence. I trust this bill will ensure and enable domestic violence programs to plan for the future and serve even more Americans in need. Importantly, this bill will also further prevention efforts, hopefully, will result in reducing domestic violence and help our nation's most vulnerable. I'm also pleased that this legislation reauthorizes programs vital to the National Council of Family and Juvenile Court Judges. The National Council has made strong impact in courts throughout the nation by teaching judges innovative strategies that equip them to appropriately assist family and young people who face significant hardships. I could not be more proud of the positive changes the National Council has effected in courtrooms and communities in Nevada and nationwide, and I'm glad this bill will further their efforts. As a fiscal conservative, I'm also glad this bill was written with full awareness of the fiscal crisis that our nation is facing. This legislation repeals duplicative provisions and programs, creating a more efficient system. I encourage my colleagues to use this bill as a model when considering additional reauthorizations this year. We must not forget the need to implement common-sense budgetary practices across the board in order to put our nation on a path to long-term fiscal responsibility. While not perfect, I am pleased the Senate is proceeding with this bill and trust it will further the important goal of reducing violence in all its forms. This bipartisan effort is an example of how members of Congress should be working together to solve the problems facing our nation and protect those who have no voice. I look forward to the passage of VAWA reauthorization measure and believe it will truly make a difference in the lives of countless women in Nevada and throughout the United States. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield back.
Madam President.
Senator from Kansas.
Madam President, as certainly every Kansan and all Americans know, our gas prices are on the rise and the U.S. economy continues to struggle. I believe one of the most important things Congress can do now is to facilitate an affordable energy in this country. In Kansas, we have the third highest number of highway miles of any state in the country. So higher fuel prices are particularly difficult for Kansans who drive long distances each day for work and for school. When business owners pay more for fuel, they have less to invest in their businesses and fewer resources to use to hire new employees. In our state, higher fuel prices increase operating costs for farmers and ranchers who produce much of our nation's food supply. One Kansas farmer feeds 155 people. The global food supply is threatened when food producers have to pay high costs to plant, harvest, and transport their production. Higher gas prices just don't affect the farmer or rancher filling their equipment. They also affect every American as they shop at their grocery store. While producers have to pay higher fuel costs, so do the folks that transport the goods to market. So that increased cost gets passed on to the consumer. We all are paying more. For the United States to remain competitive in this global economy, Congress must develop a comprehensive national energy policy. No single form of energy can provide all the answers. High fuel prices and an uncertain energy supply will continue until we take serious steps toward increasing the development of our own natural resources. Our country has some of the most plentiful, affordable, and reliable energy sources available. Our own Congressional Research Service has reported that the United States has greater energy resources than China, Saudi Arabia, and Canada combined. Unfortunately, access to those resources continues to be restricted. Technological advances have made the exploration, extraction, and transportation of oil and gas safer and more efficient. Yet the Obama administration has repeatedly blocked efforts to expand energy production. In the President's State of the Union address, the President claimed that oil and gas production has increased under his leadership. While private lands are being further developed and energy production is being increased on those private lands, energy production on federal lands has actually decreased. According to the Department of Interior, oil production on federal property fell by 14% and natural gas production fell by 11% just last year. The failure to explore and develop our vast natural resources on federal lands hits an unfortunate milestone last week. 10 years ago, the United States Senate failed to open up a fractional portion of the Arctic National Wildlife Reserve for responsible resource development. Those opposed to developing that small portion of that vast area claimed that the resources available in ANWR would not reach the market for 10 years. Well, here we are 10 years later, no closer than we were in 2002 to gaining our energy independence. American businesses involved in the oil and gas industry can bring these resources to market and send a strong signal to the world that the U.S. is serious about energy security. Yet rather than allowing these companies to deploy their expertise and increase production, there are those who say oil and gas companies deserve even more taxes, a tax increase. Raising taxes on the very businesses tasked with locating, extracting, and distributing the fuel that power our economy would do nothing to lower the costs and reduce our dependence on foreign oil. In fact, would do exactly the opposite. When the Congressional Research Service analyzed President Obama's FY12 budget proposal last year to raise taxes on the oil and gas companies, the Congressional Research Service concluded that these efforts would have the effect of, quote, decreasing exploration, development, and production while increasing prices and increasing the nation's foreign oil dependence, unquote. The nonpartisan Congressional Research Service says that these taxes will reduce domestic supply and hurt consumers. To increase domestic production, I've sponsored the 3D Act, which would require the administration to reverse their cancellation of dozens of oil and gas leases, open areas previously restricted to responsible oil and gas development, such as the Arctic National Wildlife Reserve, and streamline the environmental review process that continually ties up worthy projects in costly bureaucracy and litigation. The administration is also delaying projects that will improve our energy's infrastructure. The President's denial of the TransCanada's Keystone XL pipeline permit delayed an important project that would create thousands of jobs and bring billions to the U.S. economy. This private investment in energy infrastructure is exactly the type of investment that the President should be encouraging. Construction projects create jobs and boost local economies. For example, back home in Kansas, Clay County, it's a small, lowly populated county. Their utility sales to TransCanada could quadruple their overall sales and add more than $500,000 to the local economy every year. This would be a significant boost to the county's economic development. President Obama's own Jobs Council cited the pipeline construction as a way to boost the economy in their year-end report released January of this year, stating this, quote, policies that facilitate safe, thoughtful, and timely development of pipelines, transmission, and distribution projects are necessary to facilitate the delivery of America's fuel and electricity and maintain the reliability of our nation's energy system, unquote. But TransCanada's project has been stalled as the company works to seek a new route through the state of Nebraska to our north. But instead of putting the entire project on hold, we'd be so much better off if we would allow construction to begin in areas not subject to this rerouting so that jobs could be created and our nations could have greater access to more reliable energy. S2041, which I've sponsored, would do just that. Renewable energy must also play a role in supplying our energy needs as new technologies allow for the increased commercialization of renewable fuels. Kansas is a leader in wind production and second only to Texas in wind resource potential. Innovation in biofuel production has also increased our ability to develop additional energy from renewable sources available in my home state of Kansas. Nuclear energy is a necessary component that will help us supply our country's future energy needs and allow our country to be less reliant on energy from other nations. I'll continue to support initiatives to spur growth in the nuclear energy industry, including initiatives to streamline regulatory compliance. Energy exploration must be accompanied by energy conservation. When Americans drive more efficient vehicles and occupy energy-conserving buildings, they not only consume less energy, but they save money. At a time when gas prices continue to climb, we need to be looking for more innovative ways to help consumers save money on energy bills. Congress must develop a comprehensive national energy policy, a policy based upon the free market principles that say that we can find the resources necessary to meet our country's needs. We must develop our domestic sources of oil and natural gas and coal, encourage the development of renewable energy sources, and promote conservation. Not only would the development of our nation's resources reduce our dependence on foreign energy, it would also provide our economy with a reliable, affordable fuel supply. If future generations of Americans are to experience the quality of life that we enjoy today, the time to address our energy needs is now. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from Texas.
Madam President, I know we have not yet concluded the postal reform bill, but I came to the floor to speak on an amendment that I intend to offer when we move to the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act. The amendment that I intend to offer is one that enjoys bipartisan support, and I hope that as more senators learn about the content of this amendment and how it will strengthen the Violence Against Women Act, that they will join me and Senator Mark Kirk of Illinois and Senator Bennett of Colorado in supporting it, as well as Senator Vitter from Louisiana. I believe that it will strengthen the Violence Against Women Act that we will vote on presumably later today, probably tomorrow. I'm also to have the support for this amendment from the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, RAIN, Protect, and the Texas Association Against Sexual Assault, as well as Bexar County District Attorney, that's in San Antonio, Texas, Judge Susan Reed, who has worked with us on this amendment, and we've benefited from her counsel and that of her staff, as well as San Antonio Police Chief William McManus. At its core, this amendment would help end the nationwide rape kit backlog while improving law enforcement tools to crack down on violent criminals who target women and children for sexual assault. Now, just to give a little context, in the course of an investigation, law enforcement officials will collect DNA evidence in something called a rape kit, which is then bodily fluids that can be tested because of their signature, their DNA signature, against a bank of DNA evidence for a match. And in fact, this is a very powerful tool for law enforcement because it will literally identify someone from this DNA match in a way that nothing else can. And it also, for those of us who care, as we all do, about making sure that the innocent are not held in suspicion or convicted for crimes they didn't commit, DNA evidence can be so powerful as to literally exclude, in some instances, suspects of criminal conduct. The nationwide rape kit backlog is a national scandal, but one that many people just don't know very much about, and it has serious consequences for sexual assault victims. The truth is, we don't really know about the scope of the problem, but one estimate is that there's as many as 400,000 untested rape kits currently sitting in labs and in police station shelves across the nation, each one of them holding within themselves the potential to help solve a serious crime, and in the process take a rapist off the streets and provide a victim with the justice that they deserve. Take, for example, the case of Carol Bart. Now, Carol is from Dallas, Texas, and in 1984, Ms. Bart was kidnapped and raped at knife point outside her Dallas apartment. Although she submitted herself for rape kit testing immediately following the crime, her kit was not tested until 2008, 24 years later. When it was tested, 24 years after the rape kit specimens were collected, it yielded a match for a serial sex offender who had attempted to rape another woman only 4 months later after he raped Ms. Bart. This is one of the most important reasons why this evidence is important, because the fact of the matter is people who commit sexual assaults are not one-time offenders. They do it many times, and often they do it until they are caught. But because the rape kit in Ms. Bart's case was not tested for 24 years after the crime, the statute of limitations had run, meaning that her attacker could not be brought to justice for that particular crime. Statutes of limitations serve a worthwhile purpose under ordinary circumstances. They're designed to make sure that charges are brought on a timely basis while witnesses' memories are fresh and they can identify the perpetrator and the like. But in this instance, what it revealed as an injustice, because what it concealed was an injustice because, in fact, this late testing 24 years after the fact, which means that she could not, her attacker could not be brought to justice for that particular crime. Take also the case of Helena Lazaro, who was raped outside of Los Angeles in 1996 when she was just a teenager. Ms. Lazaro's rape kit sat untested for more than 13 years after her assault. When it was finally tested in 2009, it yielded a match to a repeat offender who had raped several women at knife point in Indiana and Ohio. And there are countless, I'm sorry to say, countless examples of similar tragedies across the country, only a handful of which are actually reported in the front pages of our major newspapers. And some of these victims, of course, have just merely suffered in silence in towns and communities across our country. One thing is clear, that while DNA evidence is powerful evidence, that we have not yet adapted our administration of testing, nor the capacity to inventory these kits in a way to make sure that they are tested on a timely basis. We have not kept up with that, but that's what this amendment hopes to do. According to a 2011 report by the National Institute of Justice, current federal programs to reduce backlogs in crime laboratories are not designed to address untested evidence stored in law enforcement agencies. Matter of fact, this is one of the problems that requires an inventory of these untested rape kits. Often the National Institute of Justice and law enforcement personnel don't even categorize a rape kit as untested until it actually is in the hands of the laboratory. And so many of them sit in evidence lockers, never making their way to the labs, and are not identified as backlogged. So there are two distinct types of rape kit backlogs: the well-known backlog of untested rape kits that have already been submitted for testing, and the hidden backlog of kits in law enforcement storage that have not been submitted for testing, as you can see, sometimes over a span of 13, in one case 24 years in the next. This amendment would help us learn more about this hidden backlog and ultimately help state and local law enforcement officials to end it. One of my experiences during the 4 years I was Attorney General of Texas was that many local jurisdictions simply don't have the expertise or the experience or the knowledge to deal with new technology, whether it's internet crimes or whether it's this new powerful DNA tool. It's not so new now, but in urban areas it's not as big of a problem. In New York City, for example, I'm sure they're quite sophisticated when dealing with this sort of evidence, but less so in smaller towns and communities across the country. The Justice for Victims Amendment would reserve 7% of existing Debbie Smith Act grant funding for the purpose of helping state and local governments to conduct audits of their rape kit backlogs. In my hometown of San Antonio, the police department recently conducted such an audit of their evidence storage facilities using similar grant funding from the state of Texas. They identified more than 5,000, and that's just in San Antonio alone, 5,000 untested sexual assault kits, of which 2,000 they determined should be submitted promptly for testing. My amendment would use existing appropriations to encourage more audits like this. It would also add accountability to the audit process by requiring grantees of these funds to upload critical information about the size, scope, and status of their backlog into a new sexual assault evidence forensic registry. This valuable information would also help the National Institute of Justice better target the approximately $100 million of existing appropriations already available for this type of testing. And in the spirit of open government, the amendment would also require the Department of Justice to publish aggregate, non-personally identifying information about the rape kit backlog on an appropriate Internet website. To ensure that these audit grants do not take resources away from actual testing, my amendment would increase the amount of Debbie Smith Act appropriations required to be spent directly on laboratory testing from the 40% currently on the underlying bill, the Leahy bill, which will be the base bill, to 75%. So what it will do is it will actually take more of the funding that Congress intended be used to process rape kits and do actual testing. It would take more of it and return it to that core function. A comprehensive approach to crime prevention and victims' rights also requires updated tools for federal law enforcement officials to target fugitives and repeat offenders. My amendment addresses this need by including bipartisan language authored by Senator Jeff Sessions that would authorize the United States Marshals Service to issue administrative subpoenas for the purpose of investigating unregistered sex offenders. It would actually be limited to that narrow purpose. This provision would allow the Marshals Service to swiftly obtain time-sensitive tracking information such as rent records and credit card statements without having to go through the grand jury process, which may or may not be necessary depending on the circumstances. Such authority is urgently needed given the long and complicated paper trail that fugitive sex offenders' investigations often entail. My amendment will also guarantee that we hand down tough punishments, appropriately so, to some of the worst crimes against women and children. For example, it includes enhanced sentencing provisions for aggravated domestic violence resulting in death or life-threatening bodily injury to the victim, aggravated sexual abuse, and child sex trafficking. Preventing these horrible crimes, I think, is at the heart of the purpose of the Violence Against Women Act, and we should take the opportunity to improve the underlying bill by adopting this amendment and send a message to would-be perpetrators and child sex traffickers. If you commit some of the worst crimes imaginable in the United States, you should have the certain knowledge that you will be tracked down and that you will receive tough and appropriate punishment. Finally, thanks to the great work of Senator Mark Kirk of Illinois, my amendment would further shed light on one of the greatest scourges of our time, and that is child prostitution and the trafficking that goes along with it. The so-called adult entertainment section of the popular online classified website, Backpage.com, is nothing more than a front for pimps and child sex traffickers. A lot has been written in the New York Times on this topic. On this website, young children and coerced women are openly advertised for sale in the sex trade. In fact, this website has been affirmatively linked to dozens of cases of child sex trafficking. Let me just give you a few recent examples. Last month, Ronnie Leon Tramble was sentenced to 15 years in prison for interstate sex trafficking through force, fraud, and coercion. Tramble forced more than 5 young women and minors into prostitution over a period of at least 5 years throughout the state of Washington. He repeatedly subjected his victims to brutal physical and emotional abuse during this time while using Backpage.com to facilitate their prostitution. In February of this year, Leighton Martin Curtis was sentenced to 30 years in prison for sex trafficking of a minor and production of child pornography. Curtis pimped a 15-year-old girl throughout Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina. He prostituted the girl to approximately 20 to 35 customers per week for more than a year, and he used Backpage.com to facilitate these crimes. According to human trafficking experts, a casual review of the Backpage.com adult entertainment website, I put that in quotations, reveals literally hundreds of children being sold for sex every day. This is absolutely sickening and should be stopped with all the tools available to us. We should no longer stand idle while thousands of children and trafficked women are raped, abused, and sold like chattels in modern-day slavery on the Internet. My amendment would therefore join all 50 state attorney generals in calling on Backpage to remove the, quote, adult entertainment section of its website. And again, I'd like to thank Senator Kirk for his leadership on this issue. Every case of sex trafficking or forced prostitution is modern-day slavery. Nothing more, nothing less. And we should do everything in our power to ensure this practice is eradicated in the United States of America. Madam President, I believe the Justice for Victims Amendment would reduce the rape kit backlog, take serial perpetrators off the street, and ultimately reduce the number of victims of sex violence. I ask my colleagues to join me in considering this amendment, which already enjoys bipartisan support. I hope it will get much broader bipartisan support, and I hope my colleagues will join with me in strengthening the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act by co-sponsoring and supporting this amendment. Our constituents and victims of these heinous crimes deserve nothing less. Thank you, and I yield the floor.
Madam President.
Republican leader.
Before the senator from Texas leaves the floor, he's walking off the floor, I was just going to ask that I be added as a co-sponsor to his very worthwhile amendment. Madam President, on another matter, one of the most heartbreaking yet unreported consequences of the Obama economy is the extent to which college graduates today are stepping out into a world where the possibilities no longer seem endless. Unlike generations past, today's college graduates are more likely to end up either unemployed or back at home with mom and dad, saddled with student loan debt that they are to end up with for the rest of their lives. And they don't tend to have the opportunity to get that job of their dreams. For a great many of them, the excitement and the promise of President Obama's campaign 4 years ago have long since faded as their hopes collided with an economy that he's done so much to reshape. So it's understandable that the President is so busy these days trying to persuade these students that the struggles they face, or will soon face, have more to do with a piece of legislation that we expect to fix than it does with his own failed promises. It's understandable he'd want to make them believe the fairy tale that there are villains in Washington who'd rather help millionaires and billionaires than struggling college students. But that doesn't make this kind of deception any more acceptable. Today, the President will hold another rally at which he'll tell students that unless Congress acts, their interest rates will go up in July. What he won't tell them is that he cared so little about this legislation that created this problem 5 years ago that he didn't even show up to vote for it. And that once he became president, he didn't even bother to include a fix for this problem in his own budget. Look, if the President was more interested in solving this problem than in hearing the sound of his own voice or the applause of college students, all he'd have to do is pick up the phone and work it out with Congress. We don't want the interest rates on these loans to double in this economy. We don't want today's graduates to have to suffer any more than they already are as a result of this president's failure to turn the economy around after more than 3 years in office. Really, the only question is how to pay for it. Democrats want to pay for it by raiding Social Security and Medicare and by making it even harder for small businesses to hire. We happen to think that at a time when millions of Americans and countless college students can't even find a decent job, it makes no sense whatsoever to punish the very businesses we're counting on to hire them. It's counterproductive and clearly the wrong direction to take. So let's be honest, the only reason Democrats have proposed this particular solution to the problem is to get Republicans to oppose it, to make us cast a vote they think will make us look bad to voters that they need to win in the next election. They admitted earlier this week to using the Senate floor as an extension of the Obama campaign. So no one should be surprised that they opted for a political show vote over a solution. What Republicans are saying is, let's end the political games and solve the problem like adults. This is an easy one. The only real challenge in this debate is coaxing the president off the campaign trail and up to the negotiating table to get him to choose results over rallies. We can solve the problems we face if only he'll let us do it. Now, Madam President, on an entirely different matter, with great sadness, I wish to report to my colleagues today that our nation and my home state of Kentucky has lost a brave and valiant soldier who pledged his life to protecting others. Staff Sergeant Gary L. Woods, Jr. of Shepherdsville, Kentucky, was killed on April 10, 2009 in Mosul, Iraq, in a terrorist suicide bomber attack. He was 24 years old. For his service to America, Staff Sergeant Woods received several medals, awards, and decorations, including the Bronze Star Medal, the Purple Heart, 2 Army Commendation Medals, 3 Army Achievement Medals, 2 Army Good Conduct Medals, the National Defense Service Medal, 3 Iraq Campaign Medals with Bronze Service Stars, the Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal, the Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, 2 Non-Commissioned Officers Professional Development Ribbons, the Army Service Ribbon, and 3 Overseas Service Ribbons. Staff Sergeant Woods, who went by Lee, was born on June 24, 1984, on a Sunday. He had very light brown hair and beautiful blue eyes, remembers Lee's mother, Becky Johnson. He was my firstborn child and my only son. Lee grew up in Shepherdsville, where he attended Roby Elementary School, Bullitt Lick Middle School, and Bullitt Central High School, from which he graduated in 2002. In school, he participated in Bullitt County's Gifted and Talented program and was a member of the academic team in both middle school and high school. Lee also loved music. He played the trumpet, baritone, and trombone in school and sang in the concert choir. He taught himself how to play piano at age 6. He played the guitar, too, and took a guitar with him on 2 tours in Iraq to entertain his friends. Lee also played the drums. Before returning from his second tour, he ordered a set of drums and had them delivered to my house, Becky remembers. When he came home on family leave, he had to set them up the minute he got there and played them in my basement for a full week. I would give anything to hear him beat on those drums again. Lee also enjoyed drawing pictures, fishing, camping, and woodworking. He was obviously a talented young man, but his mother will always remember music as one of his greatest loves. During his sophomore year at high school, Lee joined Junior ROTC. It was then that he first had the idea to one day join the service. In January 2003, Lee told his mother, that he had joined the Army. Becky was surprised at first, but when Lee laid out his argument, she could see that he had given the opportunity serious thought and was excited about the future. I knew at that instant that my son had become one heck of a man, she says. He had listened to me all those years, after all. I couldn't say anything except, I love you and I will always support you 110%. Lee entered active service in January 2003 and did his basic training at Fort Knox in my state of Kentucky. He graduated as a tank armor crewman and deployed on his first of 3 missions to Iraq from August 2003 to March 2004. Lee's second Iraq deployment lasted from March 2005 to February 2006. After his second deployment, Lee got a reassignment to the 1st Battalion, 67th Armor Regiment, 4th Infantry Division based in Fort Carson, Colorado. He deployed for the third and final time to Iraq in September 2008 and received a promotion to Staff Sergeant soon afterwards in December. In January 2009, one of Lee's fellow soldiers and close friends, Darrell Hernandez, was killed, and Lee escorted his friend back home in February. Soon after returning from this, he volunteered for a mission that would take his own life and the lives of 4 other U.S. soldiers, Becky remembers. That put Lee in the mission put Lee in a convoy of 5 vehicles that on April 10, 2009, exited the gates of Forward Operating Base Meres in Mosul, Iraq. Shortly after leaving the base, a dump truck sped toward the convoy. Lee was driving the 5th and last vehicle. Lee drove to put his gunner in position to fire on the dump truck, but tragically that dump truck detonated with 10,000 pounds of explosives, killing Sergeant Woods and 4 other American soldiers. The FBI says that the dump truck's destination was the Forward Operating Base at Meres, according to Lee's mother, Becky. If, in fact, that Forward Operating Base was the target, these 5 men saved the lives of thousands of soldiers at that base. On that same day, the same day that Lee acted heroically to save his fellow soldiers at the cost of his own life, half a world away, Becky Johnson heard a knock at the door that all military families dread. Those men in dress green uniforms with highly polished black shoes came to my house, she remembers. Yes, I noticed their shoes because that was all I could look at while they asked me if I was Becky Johnson. I told them no, as my husband stood behind me shaking his head yes. We're thinking of Staff Sergeant Woods' loved ones as I recount his story for my colleagues today, including his mother and stepfather, Becky and Pat Johnson, his father and stepmother, Gary and Debbie Woods, his sister, Brittany Lynn Woods, his 2 half-brothers, Courtney and Troy Woods, his half-sister, Heather Woods, his stepsister, Mandy Merriman, his 2 step-brothers, Newman and Corey Johnson, his grandmother, Nancy Ratliff, and many other beloved family members and friends. Staff Sergeant Woods' loss in the line of duty is tragic. However, as small a comfort as it may be, I'm pleased to report that his family may take some solace in the fact that a terrorist connected to the suicide bombing that caused Lee's death was arrested in Edmonton, Canada. And Lee's family can look forward to the prosecution of this terrorist and justice for Lee. Becky Johnson intends to attend the trial and to speak in the sentencing phase. May she and her family have the strength they will surely need to endure this process, and may they find peace in its final outcome. I would ask my Senate colleagues to join me in saying to the family of Staff Sergeant Woods that our nation is forever, forever grateful to them and recognize the great cost they have paid. And this nation will never forget the heroism of Staff Sergeant Gary L. Woods, Jr. or his great service and sacrifice. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from West Virginia.
Madam President, I rise today to speak about the importance of teaching our young people to embrace their right and responsibility to participate in our democratic election process, and to highlight a West Virginia high school that has an outstanding record for going the extra mile to encourage their students to register and vote. As Americans, there is no greater freedom or responsibility than our right to vote. Our country was born because brave men and women fought tirelessly and endured countless hardships to win their voting rights. In fact, even young people had to fight for this right. And it was West Virginia's own Senator Jennings Randolph, who was elected to serve with our beloved Robert C. Byrd, who relentlessly advocated for the 26th Amendment to the Constitution so that Americans can vote starting at age 18. In 1971, the measure finally passed. What few people know, he worked on that for over 20 years. Senator Randolph believed, just as I do, that every vote counts, and just as importantly, I believe that every voter has the right and responsibility to take an active role in our electoral process. I tell young people all the time, you cannot just sit on the sidelines and watch life happen. You have to get in the game and get active. Voting not only gives us the opportunity to have our voices heard, but also to have a real impact on setting the priorities for America's future. As Secretary of State from 2000 and 2004, which I was proudly to serve in my great state of West Virginia, I made it a priority to educate young people all over West Virginia on the electoral process and encourage them to get involved. At that time, very few people knew that if you were 17 years of age and you would turn 18 years of age before the general election, you could vote in a primary still at 17. So we educated them, and we went around to every school. And to make the goal a reality, we established a program called Saving History and Reaching Every Student, or the acronym of SHARES, our SHARES program, which was tremendously successful. I'm proud to say that during my tenure, we registered 42,000 high school students to vote. 11 years after the SHARES program began, it is my privilege to stand here on the Senate floor today and recognize a school that is truly, truly committed to carrying on this tradition and passing it down to each senior class and generation that has come after them. I'm so pleased that they have joined me here in the gallery today. Every year for the past 11 years, the staff members at Fayette County's Meadowbridge High School have registered 100% of their senior class. Think about that, 100%. It is truly an incredible accomplishment. I am unaware of any other school in the nation, and in our great state also, that has registered every student in their senior class for 11 straight years. This school and this year, the class gathered together in the school's cafeteria so that they could register at the same time. This is not only a testament to the tradition established at Meadowbridge High School, but also to the students and their commitment to their community and their civic responsibility. I congratulate Meadowbridge High School students, their faculty, their staff, under the leadership of their principal, Al Martin. The commitment to our democracy, and I would also challenge every high school, not just in West Virginia, but in New York and every other state, to follow their example, an unbelievable example. We must work together to engage our young people in national issues and encourage them to participate in the democratic process by getting our young adults involved. They're no children anymore, and the world is growing up so fast around them, and we are preparing them to be active and passionate leaders for the future. They cannot stand on the sidelines, and we as Americans cannot afford to let them stand on the sidelines. We need them in the game now. They can forge the future. And this is not a Democrat or Republican or an independent issue, but one that all Americans can and should embrace for the future of our great nation. We see so many divides here in this great capital of ours with so many of our colleagues, and everyone comes here for the right reason. The right reason truly is sitting here in this gallery today and back home. The children, the young adults who are going to be the difference and lead the next generation. I, for one, do not intend to turn this generation and the keys to this generation in worse shape than we received it. I don't want to be a person on history that says we did not do a better job than the previous generation, and we're going to work hard to make sure. But the unbelievable commitment they have made, the knowledge that they have, and the importance of voting shows me that this next generation will take us to a new level. So I'm proud that the West Virginians all over our great state, but most importantly at Meadowbridge High School, is leading that example for the rest of our country. I thank them, and I appreciate so much the effort they have made in setting an example for all. I want to thank you, Madam President, and I yield the floor and notice the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll. Mr. Akaka.